So, I mean, that's a pretty shocking conclusion. They found, if I could put it in my own words, nanothermite, that is to say, thermite thermite is essentially iron oxide and aluminum mixed, usually like in a powder form. But nanothermite is more than just powder. It's what they describe in the paper is like platelets that are, well, the chips, first of all, are about most of them, I think, are less than a millimeter in size, which is small. But the parts on the chips, the sort of platelets of aluminum and iron oxide are on the nanoscale. They're like 1,000th of the diameter of a human hair, and intimately mixed. This doesn't just happen naturally. This is a manufactured product. And when you heat this up, it essentially explodes. What is this explosive, clearly engineered material doing in the World Trade Center dust?
Now, this open chemical physics journal, open journal means that anyone can copy their, it's not copyrighted, right?
It's open access. The model is, as opposed to the model that typically when you publish a journal, there's a lot of cost in the publishing and printing each journal. And so the model was you submit a paper and they come up with this journal and people subscribe to it, right? And they have to pay for a subscription. Well, now with online publishing, the costs have been reduced so much, and it doesn't matter how many, you don't have to produce a bunch of journals. You just have to be available for people to access it, right? So they switched the model here, and the publishers, the people submitting the journal or a university on their behalf will pay, I think it's $800, and then it's paid for. Nobody has to subscribe and pay for, receiving the journals. It's open. That's the sense in which it's open access. So anybody can jump online, Google open chemical physics journal, and any of these keywords, active thermetic material. That ought to be enough, and you can find and download and read this document.
So you can copy it and give it to other people.
Yeah.
The copyright laws don't apply.
Yeah, download a PDF, send it to people. Right. Yeah.
Now I have a newspaper here from Washington D.C. and they appear to have pretty much copied the article here. It says scientists find explosives in World Trade Center dust, and it takes up 2 pages here in the newspaper. And some of the scientists here are kind of interesting. Dr. Dr. Niels Harrit of Copenhagen University in Denmark is an associate professor of chemistry and is an expert in nanochemistry. He was the lead researcher, I believe, and he was assisted by Dr. Jeffrey Farrer from Brigham Young University in the United States.
Yeah. There's an interesting story there, actually. Niels Harrit is the first author here. Originally, it was going to be Jeffrey Farrer from BYU, but another author on the paper is Stephen Jones, who was formerly of BYU, and he came out with a paper called something like "Why Indeed Did the World Trade Center Collapse?" Arguing that there's problems with the official story of that collapse. It came out maybe 2005-ish. And it caused kind of a stir at his university, and eventually he was basically forced into early retirement because of that. And so to have that kind of situation happen, and then for somebody to go and put their own name, from the same university, from the same department, go and put their own name on a paper on the same topic where their colleague had just been pushed out for writing about it. So anyway, he was going to be the first author, Jeffrey Fair from BYU. But they decided that they would run it by the chair of their department first, given the controversy. And the chair then said, you know what, we better run this by the administration. So there's issues of academic freedom here, clearly. And the administration basically said, you can have your name on this, but you can't be lead author. And it's kind of, in a way, it's generous. It's more generous than they were to Stephen Jones, but they wouldn't let him be first author. And then they also said that any further experiments you do on this topic is going to be on your own dime. You're going to have to pay. You can't just use our equipment for this. So it's really, this is the kind of thing that people who are trying to work on this topic have to deal with. It's not a level playing field. So anyway, they decided to, he said, okay, I'll be second author, and we'll have somebody else be first author. And Niels Harrit happens to be an expert in nanotechnology, so he was a very appropriate person to be the lead author. But that's the kind of politics that goes on behind the scene here.
Yes, I've heard there's a lot of politics in universities. I wonder if they actually told Stephen Jones up front that if he did this, he would lose his job, or it just happened afterwards.
Somebody had actually written an article which accused Stephen Jones of having called for the violent overthrow of the U.S. government or something. And the silly thing about it was he was accused of having done this on a particular panel, which was shown on C-SPAN. So it was very easy to watch it and see that it hadn't happened, And so that's part of what got this investigation started at BYU, and he was relieved from his teaching duties for a while. And eventually, the person who made the charge retracted it. But by that time, this process had gone on, and I don't know the details, but eventually they offered him early retirement, and he accepted it. But it's not something that he was, he wasn't looking to retire.
Mm-hmm. Being a professor at SUNY, do you worry at all when you have a course on conspiracy theories?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I do. I led a discussion recently on campus at the Institute for Ethics and Public Life. It was not open to students, but there was about a dozen, roughly, faculty there. And I laid out the case for why I believe what I do, and I can't expect to convince everybody in that kind of a format. I think people have to really look for themselves. But I think, I was glad to have done it because I think that it gives people a sense that this isn't a frivolous thing, that I've done some research, and it's not just that I've done some research, that there's a lot of scholarship out there, technical scholarship, that is highly suggestive of something very different from what we've been told.
How did you first become interested in the question of 9/11?
Intensely interested. Well, I had heard about it, but I just seemed to be too implausible that there would be any kind of inside job beyond sort of letting it happen. But it was 2006, the summer of 2006, when I saw the movie Loose Change, second edition, that I had the thought, if the material in this documentary is true, that this is a huge problem. But is it true? And so I I wanted to know, how can I find out, how can I check to see that they're not just blowing smoke. And I happened to be in Korea, and I just arrived in Korea, and I was jet lagged, and so I wasn't sleeping at night, and I was having a hard time staying awake during the day. So that's why I was watching these videos. But at night, while I couldn't sleep, I was thinking about the physics of it. And